am a really bad person. I have done terrible things that no one should ever do.
I was holding the gun in my hand. My finger was on the trigger. I was holding it with both hands, holding it kind of tightly, and that's when the gun went off.
Who pulled the trigger?
I did.
Michael Carneal was a 14-year-old freshman in 1997 when he fired a stolen pistol at a before-school prayer group in the lobby of Heath High School near Paducah.
Mr. Carneal, can you see and hear us okay? I entered my vote on September the 20th as well as a serve-out. It will remain the same today.
He was sentenced to life with the opportunity for parole after 25 years, the maximum allowed at the time for someone his age. On December 1, 1997, Carneal wrapped a shotgun and a rifle in a blanket and took them to school, passing them off as an art project he was working on. When he arrived, he inserted earplugs and took the pistol out of his bag. He fired 10 rounds in fast succession at a youth group of students. 3 girls later died, and 5 other students were wounded. Carneal dropped the gun of his own accord. After the shooting, Carneal placed his pistol on the ground and surrendered to the school principal. After dropping the gun, Carneal said, "Kill me, please. I can't believe I did that." Carneal said in an interview that he was sorry for what he had done and acknowledged that he was only thinking of himself at the time.
I know now that that's not something that I should do, and I'm able to not do it and rationalize.
Not the people he would hurt and kill. He said that there was no simple answer for why he lashed out, but that he was suffering from delusions and paranoia at the time. He said therapy and medication he received in prison had stabilized his mental health. On September 26, 2022, the parole board unanimously denied Carneal's bid for parole, and he was ordered to serve out his sentence, meaning he will remain incarcerated for the rest of his life.
At that time, I didn't know. I just felt like one shot.
Right.
But I got 5 times. So
Pardon?
5 times.
5 times?
Yes.
Nikolas Cruz, the teen who confessed to having killed 17 people at a Florida high school, told investigators that he heard voices in his head, telling him to burn, kill, and destroy, and that he tried but failed to kill himself just 2 months before the massacre, according to a just-released transcript of his first formal interview with authorities. Cruz, 19, is charged with 17 counts of murder and 17 counts of attempted murder in the assault on Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland on Valentine's Day. His attorneys have said he would be willing to plead guilty to avoid the death penalty, an offer prosecutors have rejected.
Count 6 of the indictment for the murder in the first degree of Alyssa Al-Hadef. The court imposes a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole.
Under Florida law, statements that are considered to be the substance of a confession must be withheld from the public until trial. As a result, long parts of the transcript of his interview with a Broward County Sheriff's detective are blacked out. School and government records previously made public have revealed that Cruz was diagnosed as developmentally delayed at age 3 and had disciplinary issues dating to middle school. During the interview, he says that he had used a lot of marijuana and had taken a lot of the prescription drug, Xanax. It wasn't his first suicide attempt, he says. He also seems unable to recall what city he was born in or the name of the friend he had temporarily been living with, although he does ask whether the friend is okay. Several times, the detective asks Cruz whether he wants some water. Cruz repeatedly refuses, at one point saying, "I don't deserve it." Cruz's lawyers strenuously opposed releasing even the heavily redacted transcript, arguing that it would contaminate potential jurors, but they didn't object when a judge overruled them last month.
Show us how the trigger got pulled. Can you show us?
I didn't intentionally pull the trigger. My finger was on the trigger.
How did you unintentionally pull the trigger? Can you tell to unintentionally fire?
Nathaniel Brazil. As a child, Brazil was surrounded by domestic abuse and alcoholism at home, and local police frequently responded to calls from the Brazil residents on May 26, 2000. It was the last day of school before students were to start their summer break. Brazil was a 13-year-old student at the school. Brazil was sent home early for throwing a water balloon and later returned with a gun which he had stolen from a family friend and went to Barry Gruno's English arts classroom, demanding to see 2 female classmates, when he refused to let Brazil speak to them. Brazil shot him point blank in the face and watched him die in front of his classroom door. After the shooting, he ran. Other students testified that he pointed a gun at a teacher as he fled. At his trial, Brazil told the jury he never meant to pull the trigger.
I was holding the gun in my hand. My finger was on the trigger. I was holding it with both hands, holding it kind of tightly, and that's when the gun went off.
Who pulled the trigger?
I did.
He received a sentence ranging from 25 years to life in prison. T.J. Lane. Convicted murderer Thomas T.J. Lane's obscene courtroom show to the families of his 3 victims grabbed headlines locally and nationally, raising the question, why was the teenage school shooter allowed to make this final, defiant display? Lane used his sentencing in Judge David L. Forey's Geauga County courtroom as an opportunity to invoke obscene gestures and speak to his victims' families, after he casually unbuttoned his dress shirt to reveal an undershirt with the word killer written across it in marker. The court's bailiff told members of the press that Forey did not see the shirt in the packed courtroom and would have immediately stopped the proceedings and made Lane put his dress shirt back on.
Is it true that your counsel has advised against this course?
Yes.
And despite this advice, you, of your own free and voluntary will, wish to reject that advice?
Yes.
Now, you understand that this is the only opportunity that you will have to present information in mitigation of punishment?
Lane walked into Chardon High School on February 27, 2012, carrying a .22 caliber handgun. He unleashed a spray of bullets, ultimately killing 16-year-old Daniel Parmenter, 17-year-old Russell Kane Jr., and Demetrius Hewlin, 16, and injuring Nick Walshat, Joey Rickers, and Nate Muller, who were all teenagers. Ashtabula County Sheriff William Johnson said courtroom and jail protocol differs from county to county. But had Lane been in an Ashtabula County courtroom, he wouldn't have been able to take off his clothes. During a criminal trial, a defendant wears civilian clothing and walks into the courtroom uncuffed, Johnson said.
I will miss Demetrius, and I have enough memories to last me a lifetime. That child stole my baby's life, and he should never be able to do this to anyone ever again.
Recently appointed Western County Court Judge David Schroeder said he understands Forey's allowances to Lane. Schroeder said defendants who appear in court for trial or legal proceedings have the right to wear civilian clothing, so as not to appear incarcerated. Though Lane was 17 years old at time of the shooting, he was tried as an adult, but state law prevents an underage defendant from facing the death penalty. Lane was convicted of 3 counts of aggravated murder, 2 counts of attempted aggravated murder and felonious assault, and will spend the rest of his life in prison. State law also gives him an automatic appeal. Bouche, the Crystal River man who admitted firing a gunshot through a door and injuring a Forest High School student, pleaded no contest to his charges and was sentenced to a 30-year prison term.
Do you feel sorry? Do you feel remorseful?
Yeah. That's why I put down the gun. I could have kept going. There was no officers there to stop me.
Bouche, now 22 years old, was booked into jail on April 20, 2018. After law enforcement officials said he entered the school property and fired a shot that pierced a classroom door. The shot injured a student, hitting his foot. A teacher was able to convince Bouche to come to a nearby classroom. He did so and later was detained by law enforcement officials wearing a red top and bottom and appearing via Zoom from the Marion County Jail. Bouche was sentenced by Circuit Judge Lisa Herndon.
There's a prosecutor over here, someone attorney here that here issues assault for any reason.
The prison term will be followed by 30 years of probation. His charges include discharge of a firearm on school property, possession of a short-barreled gun, and burglary of a structure with a firearm. Bouche must serve a 25-year minimum mandatory period behind bars. He must also pay restitution of more than $14,000. Bouche cannot have contact with the victim, cannot visit any public schools, cannot own any weapons, and must undergo a mental health evaluation. He also cannot seek early termination from his probation. The young man's grandmother, Linda Costello, was present at the sentencing. She told the court that her grandson is sorry. Gabriel Parker, the sophomore who killed 2 Marshall County High School classmates and injured 14 others in a 2018 school shooting, received 2 life sentences after pleading guilty to 2 counts of murder.
She was the most precious, beautiful, and selfless soul on this earth, and you took her from us.
Gabriel Parker, now a teen, was 15 when he brought his stepfather's handgun to school and opened fire in a common area, killing 15-year-old Preston Cope and Bailey Holt.
Their parenting skills are obviously demented and have raised nothing but a worthless demon.
Parker reportedly went to the school's common area to check for his friends before the shooting, to make sure they were not in the area before returning to the common area and beginning his attack. After the shooting, Parker discarded the weapon and ran to another room and hid with other students. Students unaware he was the shooter motioned for him to join them in hiding. Another student who was hiding in the location recognized Parker as the shooter and alerted a teacher in the room about the shooter's identity. The teacher then called law enforcement. In addition to 2 life sentences, Parker was sentenced to decades more in prison on 8 counts of first-degree assault and 6 counts of second-degree assault. He will be eligible for parole at age 35, 20 years after he committed the violent act. During the sentencing hearing, Marshall County Circuit Judge James Jamison spoke through tears at one point addressing the room and saying there's no real justice to be had here for any of you. We can't give you your children back.
I remember hearing a squish sound against my right ear, and it was the sound of carpet mixed with blood. And I realized it was Hannah. I could hear her groaning beside me. I kept trying to reassure her.
More than 2 years after Michigan's deadliest school shooting, a judge imposed a historic sentence.
Deterrence is 2 parts. It's private deterrence for the defendant in hopes that they would never commit an act like this again. But then there's also public deterrence, where the public sees the punishment that the individual has received in hopes that the public will never do anything like this in the future. While the court agrees that more possibly could have been done, that issue is not properly before this court.
And the harshest possible penalty for the teenage gunman. Oakland County Circuit Court Judge Paul Moreau sentenced Ethan Crumbley, 17, on Friday to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the November 2021 shooting that left 4 students dead at Oxford High School. 6 other students and a teacher were also wounded in the attack. It's a punishment that has become both rare and a point of contention over concerns about sentencing a minor to die in a cell before they reach full maturity. Crumbley, who was 15 at the time of the shooting, became the first minor to receive an original sentence of life.
I am a really bad person. I have done terrible things that no one should ever do.
Without the possibility of parole in more than a decade, since the U.S. Supreme Court in 2012 banned mandatory life sentences for juveniles and ruled courts should consider the circumstances of each defendant and their maturity before such punishments are handed down. The judge considered the likelihood of rehabilitation. Rowe, who was appointed to the 6th Circuit Court of Oakland County in 2021 by Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, made history after becoming the 2nd black man to serve on the 6th Circuit bench, according to the county website. In September, Rowe made headlines following his ruling that Crumbley would be eligible for life in prison, without the possibility of parole. Rowe considered the teen's behavior both before the mass shooting and during his time in custody.